Hare continue now this Bhagavad Gita class today night by Dr. Pookie.
Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivaryadari. Jaya Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivaradari. Yasodanandana Braja Janaranjana. Yasodanandana Braja Janaranjana. Yamuna Tira Vanachari. Yamuna Tira Vanachari. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Jaya Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivaradari. Jaya Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivaradari. Yasodanandana Braja Janaranjana. Yasodanandana Braja Janaranjana. Yamuna Tira Vanachari. Yamuna Tira Vanachari. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Jnana Tirmiyandasya Gananjana Salakaya Chakshurun Militan Yena Tasmai Shri Guruve Namaha. Shri Chaitanya Manobhistam Stapitam Yena Bhutaye Swayam Rupa Kadadmayam Dadati Svapadantikam. Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Yuta Padakamalam Shri Gurun Vaishnavamscha. Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Sahagana Raghunatham Vitam Tam Sajivam Sadvetam Savdhutam Parijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padan Sahagana Lalita Shri Visakhan Vitamscha. He Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dina Bandhu Jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostute. Tapta Kanchana Gaurangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Vrishabhanu Sutadevi Pranamami Hari Priye. Vancha Kalpa Trubhascha Kripa Sindhu Bhyevacha Patitanam pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo namo namaha. Namo Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prastaya Bhutaye Srimate Bhaktivedanta Swaminiti Namane. Namaste Saraswati Devi Gauravani Pracharane Nirvishesha Sunyavadi Prasyatya Desatarane. Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Srivasadi Gaura Bhaktivinoda. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. So I'd like to seek the blessings of all the devotees who are listening, who are assembled and listening online, that they may give me their blessings so I can please speak something that is of worthwhile and value. So today in the Bhagavad Gita, we're going to be recapping from Bhagavad Gita chapter 3, text 27, which we missed the previous few, maybe 5 classes of Bhagavad Gita due to kirtans for the devotees who are suffering and who have passed on and departed. So this is Bhagavad Gita chapter 3, text 27. Prakrite kriya manani gune karmani sarvasaha ahankara vimudatma kartaham iti manyate. The spirit soul, bewildered by the influence of false ego, thinks himself the doer of activities that are in actuality carried out by the 3 modes of material nature. So 2 persons, one in Krishna consciousness and the other in material consciousness, working on the same level, may appear to be working on the same platform, but there is a wide gulf of difference in their respective positions. The person in material consciousness is convinced by false ego that he is the doer of everything. He does not know that the mechanism of the body is produced by material nature, which works under the supervision of the Supreme Lord. The materialistic person has no knowledge that ultimately he is under the control of Krishna. The person in false ego takes all credit for doing everything independently, and that is a symptom of his nescience. He does not know that the gross and subtle body is a creation of material nature under the order of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, and as such, his bodily and mental activities should be engaged in the service of Krishna. In Krishna consciousness, the ignorant man forgets that the Supreme Personality of Godhead is known as Rishikesha, or the master of the senses, of the material body, for due to his long misuse of the senses in sense gratification, he is factually bewildered by the false ego, which makes him forget his eternal relationship with Krishna. So that's chapter 3, text 27, which speaks about the spirit soul which is bewildered by the influence of false ego. So I'm going to firstly go through all the verses, and then I'll speak something after. One who is in knowledge of the absolute truth, almighty armed, does not engage himself in the senses and sense gratification, knowing well the differences between work in devotion and work for fruit of results. The knower of the absolute truth is convinced of his awkward position in material association. He knows that he is part and parcel of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Krishna, and that his position should not be in the material creation. He knows that his real identity as part and parcel of the Supreme, who is eternal bliss and knowledge, and he realizes that somehow or other he is entrapped in the material conception of life, in its pure state of existence. He is meant to dovetail his activities in devotional service to the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Krishna. He therefore engages himself in the activities of Krishna consciousness and becomes naturally unattached to the activities of the material senses, which are all circumstantial and temporary. He knows that his material condition of life is under the supreme control of the Lord. Consequently, he is not disturbed by all kinds of material reactions, which he considers to be the mercy of the Lord. According to Srimad Bhagavatam, one who knows the absolute truth in three different features, namely Brahman, Paramatma, and the Supreme Personality of Godhead, is called a Tattvavit. For he knows also his own factual position in relationship with the Supreme. I'll just also recite the Sanskrit for this verse. Tattvavit tu mahabaho guna karma vibhagayo gunaganasu vartanta iti matva nasajati. So this is moving on to text 329. Prakritar guna samudha sanjante guna karmasu tan akrisna vido mandan krishna vinna vichalayat. Bewildered by the modes of material nature, the ignorant fully engage themselves in material activities and become attached. But the wise should not unsettle them, although these duties are inferior due to the performer's lack of knowledge. Persons who are unknowingly, falsely persons who are unknowledgeable, falsely identify with gross material consciousness and are full of material designations. This body is a gift of the material nature, and one who is too much attached to the bodily consciousness is called manda, or a lazy person, without understanding of the spirit soul. Ignorant men think of the body as the self. They accept bodily connections with others as kinsmanship. The land in which the body is obtained is their object of worship, and they consider the formalities of religious rituals to be ends in themselves. Social work, nationalism, and altruism are some of the activities for such materially designated persons. Under the spell of such designations, they are always busy in the material field. For them, spiritual realization is a myth, and so they are not interested. Those who are enlightened in spiritual life, however, should not try to agitate such materially engrossed persons. Better to prosecute one's own spiritual activities silently. Such bewildered persons may be engaged in such primary moral principles of life as non-violence and similarly materially benevolent work. Men who are ignorant cannot appreciate activities in Krishna consciousness, and therefore Lord Krishna advises us not to disturb them and simply waste valuable time. But the devotees of the Lord are more kind than the Lord, because they understand the purpose of the Lord. Consequently, they undertake all kinds of risks, even to the point of approaching ignorant men to try to engage them in the acts of Krishna consciousness, which are absolutely necessary for the human being. And on to 330. Mai sarvani karmani sanyasa vad yat atma chetasa nirasir nirmano bhutva yuda yasva vigata dvara. Therefore, O Arjuna, surrendering all your works unto me with full knowledge of me, without desires for profit, with no claims to proprietorship, and free from lethargy, fight. This verse clearly indicates the purpose of the Bhagavad Gita. The Lord instructs that one has to become fully Krishna conscious to discharge duties as if in military discipline. Such an injunction may make things a little difficult. Nevertheless, duties must be carried out with dependence on Krishna, because that is the constitutional position of the living entity. The living entity cannot be happy independent of the cooperation of the Supreme Lord, because the eternal constitutional position of the living entity is to become subordinate to the desires of the Lord. Arjuna was therefore ordered by Sri Krishna to fight as if the Lord were his military commander. One has to sacrifice everything for the goodwill of the Supreme Lord, and at the same time discharge prescribed duties without claiming proprietorship. Arjuna did not have to consider the order of the Lord, he had only to execute his order. The Supreme Lord is the soul of all souls. Therefore, one who depends solely and wholly on the Supreme Soul without personal consideration, or in other words, one who is fully Krishna conscious, is called Adhyatma Shetas. Nirasi means that one has to act on the order of the master, but should not expect fruitive results. The cashier may count millions of dollars for his employer, but he does not claim a cent for himself. Similarly, one has to realize that nothing in the world belongs to any individual person, but that everything belongs to the Supreme Lord. That is the real purport of Maya, or unto me. And when one acts in such Krishna consciousness, certainly he does not claim proprietorship over anything. This consciousness is called nirmama, or nothing is mine. And if there is any reluctance to execute such a stern order, which is without consideration of so-called kinsmen in the bodily relationship, that reluctance should be thrown off. In this way, one may become vigata vara, or without a feverish mentality or lethargy. Everyone, according to his quality and position, has a particular type of work to discharge, and all such duties may be discharged in Krishna consciousness, as described above. That will lead one to the path of liberation. So this is onto text 3.3.1. Ye me matam edam nityam anustitanti manavaha Shraddhavanto nasuyanto muchyanti te bikarma bi. Those persons who execute their duties according to my injunctions and who follow this teaching faithfully without envy become free from the bondage of fruitive actions. The injunction of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Krishna, is the essence of all Vedic wisdom, and therefore is eternally true without exception. As the Vedas are eternal, so this truth of Krishna consciousness is also eternal. One should have firm faith in this injunction, without envying the Lord. And there are many philosophers who write comments on the Bhagavad Gita, but have no faith in Krishna. They will never be liberated from the bondage of fruitive action. But an ordinary man with firm faith in the eternal injunctions of the Lord, even though unable to execute such orders, becomes liberated from the bondage of the law of karma. In the beginning of Krishna consciousness, one may not fully discharge the injunctions of the Lord, but because one is not resentful of this principle and works sincerely without consideration of defeat and hopelessness, he will surely be promoted to the stage of pure Krishna consciousness. And on to text 32. Yesve etad abhyasuryanto nanustistanti me matam sarva jnana vimudams tan vidi nastan achetasaha. But those who out of envy disregard these teachings and do not follow them regularly are to be considered bereft of all knowledge, befooled, and ruined in their endeavors for perfection. The flaw of not being Krishna conscious is clearly stated herein. As there is punishment for disobedience to the order of the Supreme Executive Head, so there is certainly punishment for disobedience to the order of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. A disobedient person, however great he may be, is ignorant of his own self, and of the Supreme Brahman, Paramatma, and the Personality of Godhead, due to a vacant heart. Therefore there is no hope of perfection of life for him. So this runs through these five verses or so that speak mostly of the difference between material pursuits and spiritual pursuits. That as is mentioned in the Bhagavad Gita, chapter 5, text 22. Yehi samsparsa ja boga dukkha yoneya evate adyantan vanta kunteya natasu ramate buddha. An intelligent person does not take part in the sources of misery which are due to contact with the material senses. O son of Kunti, such pleasures have a beginning and an end, and so the wise man does not delight in them. So there's a clear difference that those who are engrossed in material consciousness, they have the propensity of proprietorship and enjoying. So there's certain knowledge that one needs to know in terms of spiritual life and following the orders of the Guru and ultimately Krishna. So it is that one has to know that they aren't a proprietor and they aren't the enjoyer, as it mentions in the verses we just read, that one should realize that nothing is his, that everything belongs to Krishna. This is also mentioned in the Sri Upanishad, that in terms of that one should accept her quota and not accept anything more, knowing well to whom everything belongs. And for this reason, in the material conception of life, there's this saying that when there is division, there is conflict. That naturally, in this age of Kali Yuga, we're even divided within in terms of a good and a bad, and this is externally manifested in relation to, as it was mentioned, kinsmanship, accepting one's accepting one on identification of nationality, identifying with communities, countries, but not accepting things on the absolute sense on the spirit of the spirit soul. So in terms of the material modes of nature, there is goodness, ignorance, and passion. So most of this world is in passion and ignorance. So if one acts in ignorance, these actions they're not beneficial from the beginning, and they don't lead to anything beneficial. They're just they don't give any sense of happiness in the first place, and they lead to more entanglement, and ultimately one will degrade themselves in their consciousness they'll prepare themselves actually to take birth in a lower species of life, in terms of the animal kingdom, more than likely. That it's mentioned that there's 8,400,000 species of life. The plant kingdom, and the animal kingdom, including all the insects, and there's 400,000 species of human life, and these 400,000 species of human life are divided based on their conditioning. So one in the mode of ignorance will be naturally degraded, and one in the mode of passion, which in terms of happiness, it may give some happiness in the beginning, but ultimately this will not be lasting happiness. As is mentioned, such pleasures have a beginning and an end. So, and then in the mode of goodness, these are more not naturally. If there isn't much mode of goodness in this material world, so one who is situated in the mode of goodness, they're naturally going to be on the path of following scriptures, and ultimately on the way to transcending the modes of material nature. So from Bhagavad Gita, chapter 7, text 14. Devi yasa guna mayi mama maya duratyaya mameva ye parpadyante mayam etam tarantite. And translation: this divine energy of mine, consisting of the three modes of material nature, is difficult to overcome, but those who have surrendered unto me can easily cross beyond it. So, as Dal Baladev Prabhu mentioned in his class today, in terms of following Krishna, that one has to first become Guru Das before they can become Krishna Das. So, in what Lord Chaitanya has said, that we have to become the servant of the servant of the servant. So we see ourselves, we have to see ourselves as a servant of everyone, and to naturally develop humility. As mentioned in the Shishastakam text, in text 3, Trinada pi sunishana, Tror pi sahishana, Amanina, Manadana, Kirtina, Sadhari. So naturally one who is thinks themselves lowly, not in terms of bad self-esteem, but not thinking themselves important or worthy of, not trying to hold on to much outward or external respect. And then one has to develop tolerance. And naturally, when one doesn't have this, you have this humility, not thinking themselves any higher, or just that they deserve respect. So they naturally have the false prestige. And then naturally with this mind, then one can naturally chant and take to the process of devotional service. As is mentioned in the Gita 4.3.4, that one must approach the spiritual master submissively and render devotional service unto him. So this is a verse from the Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 10, Chapter 14, Text 8. Tate nukampam susamik samano, bunjana evatma kritam vipakam, redvag vapur bir viradhan namaste, jiveta yo mukti pade sadaya bak. My dear Lord, one who earnestly waits for you to bestow your causeless mercy upon him, all the while patiently suffering the reactions of his past misdeeds, and offering you respectful obeisances with his heart, words, and body, is surely eligible for liberation, for it has become his rightful claim. So in Krishna consciousness, we know that in terms of karma, there's a-karma, su-karma, and vi-karma. So naturally there's good reactions and bad reactions in terms of material karma in on the material sense. But when one takes the devotional service, their karma becomes a karma, which means that it's tailor made by the Lord for their own purification. And naturally, when one is engaged in devotional service, that is liberation in itself. So Srila Sridhar Swami explains in his commentary that just as a legitimate son has to simply remain alive to gain an inheritance from his father, one who simply remains alive in Krishna consciousness, following the regulative principles of Bhakti Yoga, automatically becomes eligible to receive the mercy of the personality of Godhead. In other words, he will be promoted to the kingdom of God. The word Su Samik Samana indicates that the devotee earnestly awaits the mercy of the Supreme Lord, even while suffering the painful effects of previous sinful activities. Lord Krishna explains in the Bhagavad Gita that the devotee who fully surrenders unto him is no longer liable to suffer the reactions of his previous karma. However, because in his mind a devotee may still maintain the remnants of his previous sinful mentality, the Lord removes the last vestiges of the enjoying spirit by giving his devotee punishments that may sometimes resemble sinful reactions. The purpose of the entire creation of God is to rectify the living entity's tendency to enjoy without the Lord, and therefore the particular punishment given for a sinful activity is specifically designed to curtail the mentality that produced the activity. Although a devotee has surrendered to the Lord's devotional service, until he is completely perfect in Krishna consciousness, he may maintain a slight inclination to enjoy the false happiness of this world. The Lord therefore creates a particular situation to eradicate this remaining enjoying spirit. This unhappiness suffered by a sincere devotee is not technically a karmic reaction. It is rather the Lord's special mercy for inducing his devotee to completely let go of the material world and return home back to Godhead. A sincere devotee earnestly desires to go back to the Lord's abode. Therefore he willingly accepts the Lord's merciful punishment and continues offering respects and obeisances to the Lord with his heart, words and body. Such a bona fide servant of the Lord, considering all hardship a small price to pay for gaining the personal association of the Lord, certainly becomes a legitimate son of God, as indicated here by the words Deyabak. Just as one cannot approach the sun without becoming fire, one cannot approach the Supreme Pure, Lord Krishna, without undergoing a rigid purificatory process, which may appear like suffering, but which is in fact a curative treatment administered by the personal hand of the Lord. So naturally that when we follow the Lord's path set out by the Srila Prabhupada and the Parampara, that our karma takes on a different approach. And naturally, as it was mentioned in the Bhagavad Gita, even if one is still unable to follow the processes and the regulative principles, if they are sincere, Krishna will recognize this and reciprocate, and in due course of time, they will get purified. So thank you very much for listening to today's Bhagavad Gita class, and this will be the end of today's class. So I will. So Bhagavad Gita ki, Jai. Srila Prabhupada ki, and all assembled devotees ki, Jai. was a book for the congregation who come to know the class. Yeah, it's from all parts of the congregation. There's already one from upstairs. I don't know if we need an extra guy or whatever it's got to be. Extra? Yeah, it's from Prabhupada downstairs. Yeah. Yeah. Okay, so I can push for the congregation. Okay. All right, thank you. No, it's off.
Sorry, because it's just background service, so they don't really want things to change, so you probably know more than us.
Okay.
But also, you should be very...
Normally what happens is people request you have to write them down,
Okay.
so that we reserve them.
But the two for Prabhupada are always.
Yeah, because also just management sees you, but they tell you you should be wearing masks.
Yeah.
Technically, I'm just saying, I don't mind, but
Thank you.
somebody else sees you, they're going to be onto you, yeah?
Thank you very much.